Episode number 125 with Carlos Welch. Welcome to the Heads Up Poker Podcast. This is Steve Barton, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your reviews, thank you for your tweets, and thank you for tuning in each and every week. And this week, I am back with Carlos Welch. Welcome, Carlos.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So what's new in the world of Carlos? The last time we talked, it was, a can of black beans and poodles, I think.
Okay, so there's been a little bit of an adjustment to that, and this is something that I've been talking about a little bit on Twitter. Over the past 2 months, I've been on a bit of a downswing, and what's weird about it is I'll check my stats in my holder manager, and I'm actually running pretty good. I'm playing good, and I'm running better, and I'm still losing. So yeah. that is a weird combination of events that I don't even know how to feel about that. That sucks, but it is what it is. But on the flip side, I've been experimenting more with the whole food, whole plant based eating, and so I've expanded beyond black beans and more fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, and basically giving up the processed stuff almost completely. And my poker is on a downswing, but so is my blood pressure. So that's a good thing.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So in addition to the black beans, the other stuff I'm eating is like when I was just doing the black beans, I was losing weight, but also for whatever reason, my blood pressure was not really budging. And now I've kind of like thrown in a bunch of other things that cause my blood pressure to go down, but my weight loss is slowing. But you know what? I'll take that. I'd rather have like a low blood pressure than a low weight.
Yeah. How heavy were you when you started, and what do you weigh now?
When I first started, I was like 260 when I left for Thanksgiving. So I left here, Bullhead City in Arizona, around like 255, 260. And I went home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And from that road, just eating crap on the road, eating crap at my grandma's house, eating crap in Cherokee because that's where I was really going. And also eating crap on the road back. I went from like 260 to like 288.
Oh, wow.
And this was like at the end of January. And so I got down from the, say, February to, let's say, about right before my last trip. So February to the end of April, I got down to like 255. And that was, when I was doing the black beans. But that whole time, my blood pressure was still high. And then I saw a doctor who wanted to put me on the blood pressure pills. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, yeah. To me, that's like the biggest scam there is. Because it doesn't
for me, it'd be feeling like I'm admitting defeat,
It doesn't address the problem. Yeah. It does feel like admitting defeat. It's admitting that you're too addicted to change the underlying issue, and all it is a Band-Aid. That the way I look at it, because I'm a nit when it comes to spending money. I look at it as it's just like they sell you these cheap pills as a Band-Aid just to kind of hold you over until they can sell you a bypass surgery later.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pay for the bypass surgery. I don't want to pay for these pills. And all I have to do is just eat more plants. Yeah. And so I started doing some research on it. And I did and my blood pressure is dropping like a rock over the last 2 weeks or so. And so I'm gonna keep up with this. Like, to me, this is my weight will catch up eventually. When I'm looking at my weight as like the primary goal is like weight loss, I can do that in a lot of unhealthy ways. But if I'm looking at general health as the goal, then there's really only way to do it, in my opinion, and that is to just eat a variety of whole plant foods.
Yeah. I did some research in between our last podcast. We talked about fasting, and that's where the black beans came from. So if you guys didn't hear that one, go back to episode 120, and we talked cold showers. And I bought I never thought I'd do this, but I bought a chili pad, by the way. You know, the one that circulates cold water underneath your mattress in a pad, and you can set it for a certain temperature.
Oh, I didn't know that existed. That sounds pretty cool.
Oh, dude, it is awesome. You can set it anywhere from 100 degrees if you run cold and you want to sleep hot, down to the lowest setting, I think, is like 55 or something. So I just put it on the lowest setting, and it takes about 15 minutes to get it down to there. So I usually turn it on, and then I'll kind of go through my nightly routine of brushing my teeth and, dental floss and all that, and then get my cup of water. And by the time I'm ready to go to bed, it's cold. And it's not cheap. For the cheapest one, which is the one I got, was a single pad, and that was $450. But that's including shipping and everything that shipped to your house. Right. But I look at it like it's a life investment, because the cold pack in the freezer was good, but at about 1 or 2 in the morning, that thing's just as hot as you are, and it doesn't last throughout the night. Right. This thing, you just dial it in, and you basically go comatose until your alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, and then you're ready to wake up. It is so awesome. Oh, so anyhow, I got that. And then I've been experimenting with the fasting kind of intermittently. Mm-hmm. So like what I'll do is, at least the research that I did was, if you look back into when we were cavemen and hunters and gatherers, we might make a kill, and then we basically gorge ourselves for, 24 hours, and then you may not eat again for 3 days until you get your next kill. And if you can kind of take that principle, what you basically do is you have breakfast, you have lunch, and then you have dinner. Well, then normally you go to sleep, you sleep for, let's say, 8 hours, and then the next morning you have breakfast. Well, our bodies are burning the glucose that we eat, so the plants and fruits and meat and all that. And then it kind of runs out of that fuel after about 8 hours. And now the next time that, so if you don't eat after those 8 hours, now what it does is it starts pulling energy from your fat reserves. So when you extend that fast of most of it you're sleeping for, when you extend that beyond about 8 or 10 hours, then at that point, you're just burning pure fat. Right. And so what you do is basically you get up in the morning and you work out, which even jumpstarts that even more, and it starts burning from those fat reserves. And then you kind of put off breakfast for as long as you feel comfortable. So the first time, my normal routine was I wake up at 5, I work out, and then I have a smoothie right at 7 o'clock. Well, now what I do is I still make the smoothie, but the first day I drove to work, and then I got there about 7:15, and I drank the smoothie like half an hour later than I normally would. And then the next day you can find that you're really not hungry on the drive to work, but you're really hungry around 7:30. And if you can push it back to 7:45, then you drink it. And so you add an extra 15 minutes of it burning your fat reserves. And you just kind of keep pushing it back a little bit each day. So now I'm able to have breakfast around 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and this is after a few weeks of doing this. So I have noticed that I am getting thinner, and it doesn't seem to affect my energy levels at all. It's just kicking it back, just 15 minutes a day or so, being able to push back that meal and extending the fast just a little bit more.
Yeah. I enjoy it. The one thing I will say about eating the plants is, if you're doing it with a lot of vegetables, it's hard to get a lot of calories. And so I've been basically giving up some of my fasting time, because if I don't eat during those hours, then I'm not going to get enough calories that day. So it's kind of hard to like fill up on, like, I've been doing like um, spinach, a lot of watermelon. I found some pretty cheap ones around here, and that's really good for blood pressure also.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. Um, Potatoes I'll do, and mushrooms. So like that kind of stuff doesn't have a lot of calories in it. Like when I was doing when I was doing a lot of the fasting stuff, it was because um, it was pretty easy for me to get calories, so I would just kind of like push them into like a smaller eating window. But now if I try to like have a small eating window and try to get enough calories in that window, I would literally be eating nonstop. So I've kind of avoided the fasting a little bit, at least as hardcore as I was doing it before. It definitely works for weight loss, but this is just something that um, I won't have to do if I'm super strict on my diet. And I shouldn't say strict. I shouldn't, because strict make it sound like it sucks. Like I'm eating more and like better than I ever have, and my health is improving. Like I had a frozen banana and put it in a blender. It tasted exactly like ice cream, and I'm thinking like I cannot believe that I've been like suffering through these damn black beans when I could have been eating banana ice cream. You know, and
Yeah.
all it is a frozen banana blended up, and it's just as good as ice cream. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm never giving this stuff up, man.
You know what's a real good one that I did? I still do actually. I don't do it as often as I normally do, but I have these meals pre-made up in my freezer. And what you do is you get frozen vegetables. So about a third of it is frozen spinach, the other third is frozen broccoli in just a Tupperware container. And then kind of add in whatever else you want. You know, collard greens. I like the little mixed bag of corn and carrots and
Right,
green beans and peas, you know, and then you fill it the rest of the way up with that. Now you stick that frozen Tupperware container with those vegetables in it in the freezer, make up 10 of them. And I figured it out, per meal cost was less than $2. So you get these frozen containers of vegetables in the freezer. Then when you're ready to eat, to have a meal, you pull one of those out, flop it in a bowl, and put it in the microwave for 3 minutes and warm it up. And then you basically just get a can of tuna, throw it in the top, and then put a little bit of olive oil on it, or some type of dressing with olive oil in it. You know, make sure it doesn't have any sugar in it. And that is like a fast way to make a meal. You can make it on a 5-minute tournament break, and it's super, super healthy. And you won't be hungry after that for about 4 or 5 hours.
right. Now I know a lot of people um, have different food preferences. Like I would do the same thing except without the tuna and without the oil, just like
Okay.
just pure whole plants. And so that's basically what I'm doing. But the downside to that is, like I said, it's a lot less calories if you don't add tuna and oil. So I may have to eat like 4 of those, which doesn't leave me much room for fasting. But a similar approach, but just a different volume of whole plant foods.
Yeah, I tried doing the vegan thing I lasted 3 days, and I felt always hungry. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much I could gorge and fill my stomach, I never felt like I was satisfied, or like I wasn't hungry anymore. You know what I mean? It, it didn't work for, maybe I didn't give it long enough. I didn't give it enough of a chance, but by day 3, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I need a steak or something.
And see, the thing I noticed is like I'm less hungry when I eat vegetables. And
Really?
yeah, and I think a lot of it may have to do with the variety. I don't know if that has something to do with it. And it's like for example, I could eat like a whole watermelon right now. Like in fact, I already ate half of a watermelon today, and I'm feeling pretty stuffed. But that whole
Huh.
thing was probably like, I don't know, 500 calories or something. And I could probably go the rest of the day without eating, but why would I when I can have banana ice cream, which is like only another 100 calories. So like I'm constantly eating because I enjoy the stuff I'm eating, but I could easily like, start off with like a salad with like spinach, and then I'll do black beans instead of a dressing. I'll just put like black beans on top of my spinach. I could eat that and not eat anything else the rest of the day and feel fine. And so maybe I got maybe it's because I have more fat stores than you. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I haven't felt deprived at all eating this way.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Good deal. Oh, I got a. Well, I think you were attached to this as well. I got a tweet from Itchy Bollocks on Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah, it's his name is Jason, and he wrote a tweet out there that I just had to share on the podcast because we've been talking about Trump and everything, and he related it to poker pretty well. He said, in poker parlance, my current reading of the eco-political situation is Trump, a lag, is on the button with 100 big blinds and has raised 5x into North Korea, super lag, who is in the small blind with 25 big blinds. And Trump is so trolleyed, he hasn't taken into account that China is in the big blind with 200 bigs. I think and hope the Department of State tonight has Trump tied to a chair and is whacking him across the head with the telephone book.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, I like that.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I think he was probably writing this after about 3 beers, and it was perfect. It was like, oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
The one I like the latest is that we're going to build the wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. We'll just bill them later.
Yeah. Yeah. That, who knows how all that stuff is going to work out, man? This is insane.
Yes. Every day there's something about Trump on the front page of the paper, and I don't think he would have it any other way. Good or bad, I think he just likes press.
Yeah, I think he enjoys it for sure.
Yes, he does.
He would be excited to know that we're talking about him right now.
I think he would. Speaking of excited, okay, how's this for a segue? Live read here. Elliot Roe. Yes, do not play a hand of poker unless you listen to that man's voice first. Meditation tapes just before you play. You got to get in the right mindset so that you can focus on poker. Listen to an MP3 before you play. Put it on your phone, your computer, your tablet, whatever you got. He's got MP3s for everything. Live cash, online MTTs, post-game cooldown, the Mindset Booster package, which comes with 5 MP3s. He's got a confidence, motivation, recovery, volume, a study booster. He also has a simple volume system. Just try it for free. There's no obligation. Listen to his 7-minute Tilt-Buster. You put it right on your phone and you listen to it before you play. It's free. It's from me to you. This is the next step in poker, the Mindset Advantage by Elliot Roe. Use the code HUPOKER, score yourself a little discount. You'll find the link in the show notes, HUPOKER. Right on. Well, we were talking earlier, and we were talking about some interesting spots as far as hero folds. And we pulled up a few hands here, and I think I might have trouble with this too. You know, there's times where I bet and then someone unexpectedly raises, and then I ask myself, oh, maybe this was a bet fold, or was this better as a check call? And then I end up finding myself like clicking the call button anyways, and then he shows the flush, and I'm like, well, what the hell did you think he had, Steve? Like, what else would he do that with? You know what I mean?
Right.
So we pulled up a few hands for you guys here. Which one you want to start with, Carlos? You want to start with we looked through 10 of them. Number 1 was a good one, right?
Yeah. So this first hand is from, and all these are tournaments I played on Ignition. And this first one is pretty early. And at the 30-60 level, and we're about 100, and actually I should just say 9,600 chips deep.
Okay.
So really deep, over 150 big blinds. There's a limp from early position, a limp from the cutoff, and I'm on the button with Ace King of Hearts facing two limpers.
Okay.
So I raised to 360 here, 6x, six big blinds.
I like that when you got two limpers here, and especially early stages in ignition, people are just going to call here with 4 or 5 of hearts, and
Right.
all sorts of stuff.
So small blind folds, big blind calls, and both limpers calls. So we're 4 ways to a flop. There's 1470 in the middle. And the flop is Ace of Diamonds, 9 of Spades, 4 of Spades.
4 of Spades. Okay, we're on the button. We're last to act. Okay.
Yep. So it checks around to me, and I bet half pot with top pair, top kicker.
Okay, so we got Ace King of Hearts. The board is Ace of Diamonds, 9 of Spades, 4 of Spades. Big blind checks, early position checks, cutoff checks, and we're on the button with top pair, top kicker, no backdoors. What do you bet into 1470?
Half pot, so 735.
735. Okay.
And on this site, I'm expecting to get called by all kinds of crap. So obviously any ace, any 9, 2 spades for sure, maybe even like some backdoor draws. If somebody happens to have a 4, I wouldn't be shocked to see them call with bottom pair here. So betting to get value from all that stuff.
Yeah.
Big blind calls and the other 2 fold.
Okay.
So now on the turn, we get the King of Spades. So the flush came in, and now there's 2940 in the middle. And there's like 8,500 behind effective.
Okay.
And so I bet half pot again.
Okay, so big blind checks into you, and then you bet half pot.
Yep. So now I have top 2.
Yeah. And what's half pot here? Save me the math.
1470.
70? Okay.
Yep.
1470. Okay.
So I bet he calls. And at this point, I'm betting turn to get value from all the weaker aces. Don't think a 4 is calling the turn. And I think I can still get value from a 9 that has a spade as well. Something like, say, like 10-9 with the 10 of spades, something like that.
Yeah,
so have several hands I can get value from. So I bet again.
Okay.
The river
what's the pot at this point?
On the river, the pot is 5880.
5880. Okay.
And
you guys each have about 7K behind, something like that?
Yep.
Okay. A little bit more in the pot. All right.
The river is the 2 of diamonds.
2 of diamonds. Blank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, unless he had 5-3, I guess. But.
Right. So he checks to me, and then on the river, I can still get value from all the aces. That's pretty much it, though. Like, I don't think he has many kings in his range. And if he has a 9, I think he's going to fold to the river. So I'm basically betting the river to get value from the aces. And I think he should have a lot of them, given that he just defended from the big blind. So I bet river. So I bet half pot on the river, 2940.
40, okay.
And he shoves the rest of his stack, which is 7365.
Yeah, now, okay, so to kind of recap the action here. Okay, so we got Ace King of Hearts. We get 2 limpers. We raise to 6x, 360. Big blind cold calls. Then the 2 original limpers call. We go to a flop with 1470 in the pot, and the flop is Ace of Diamonds, 9 of Spades, 4 of Spades, and we got 2 hearts, so we block. none of that. But so we got top pair. Checks to us. We bet out. Big blind calls. The other two fold. So we're heads up to the turn with about 3K in the pot. The turn is the king of spades. So the flush comes in, but we got top two pair. Big blind checks to us. We bet out half pot. He calls. Okay, so at this point, when he just cold calls in the big blind, I'm thinking that he's got a lot of aces in his range and a lot of like suited connectors, connecting cards, stuff like that. You know, I'm thinking he has a fair amount of aces, a lot of nines in his range. But then when he check calls the turn, I mean, see, I feel like at this point, if he had a set, you know, something that's beating us here, I think we would have heard from him on the turn.
Right.
You know, like if he had it, pocket nines would make a lot of sense. Pocket fours would make a lot of sense until he just calls the turn. Then I think, like, is he even two pairs, like ace nine or ace four? I feel like he's raising there on the turn.
Right. Like generally those hands are going to raise on the turn to protect their hand. And even the times people don't raise those hands on the turn, like if they're not raising them on the turn, it's because they're afraid that they're behind the flush. And if that's the case, they don't all of a sudden check shove those hands on the river.
Yeah.
Like anybody that just calls the turn with ace nine, they're just going to call the river with ace nine also.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think the guy has many like sets or two pairs in his range when he check shoves the river. And so first we need to think, is he doing this for value or as a bluff? And generally people on this site don't bluff enough, especially somebody who has been passive so far in this hand. So I don't think he's like bluffing at this point. And all the strong hands, all the hands that he may want to do this for value with that we beat, I think he would have done it on the turn. Like if he wanted to like get it in with two pair, he would have done it on the turn. So I feel like this is a rare bluff, or it's just like a flush. Yeah. And so I folded to his river shove.
Yeah, I feel like all the hands, I think, with like ace queen and ace jack might kind of make sense here until he shoves the river.
Right.
Then that goes out the window. And then the only hand that I can picture him doing this with that you beat and is not a bluff is ace deuce. But even that is so few and far between. Like, I don't think you're losing anything by folding here to that the few times that he has that. Right. And I think most people would just call there with that. I don't think they're gonna raise it for value.
Exactly. So you kind of got to take all that stuff into account. Most people would just call that with ace deuce, but the few people who would raise here with ace deuce, there's definitely people out there like that. But then again, there's not that many combos of ace deuce versus all the other hands he could have. Like one thing that I like to point out in this hand is that this guy called out of the big blind getting a really good price. There was like 4 to a flop. And so he has, because he's in the big blind and he's closing the action, he has more flushes available than anybody else would. Like, for example, this guy could have like, I don't know, 10-7 of spades where maybe a guy doesn't open a hand like that from early position. Even like,
well, what do you mean? Are you talking pre-flop? He's closing the action, or
yeah? So pre-flop, there was.
Well, you raised to 360 on the button, and then he calls in the big blind, and then there's like two other guys that.
You're right.
So he's not closing the action, but if two guys limped behind him, it's a lot less likely that they're going to raise.
Right, and that's a really good point. And it's like, He's not closing the action, but you can almost play these type of spots as if you're closing the action, because limp re-raises are so rare. So for that reason, I think the guy has more flushes out of the big blind than he would from most other positions.
Yeah. 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 And did we get the results on that one? I know in ignition you can.
Yes. So this guy had, so again, just to recap, he checks to me on the river. I bet half pot. He shoves. I'm getting 3.8 to 1. This is another mistake I think I hear a lot of people saying. I'm getting almost 4 to 1. I only have to be good. In this spot, I only had to be good 21% of the time. But the guy's just not bluffing that often. And he's not value betting with worse that often. So I decided to fold. And he did have the flush, 7-3 of spades.
God, that's so bad.
Yeah. Welcome to ignition.
Nice fold. Yes. Welcome to ignition.
Yeah. And this,
so all you Euros playing on Poker Stars, and you got to deal with wizards and stuff. This is what we're dealing with in America here.
Right. And the sad thing of all, the saddest thing of all, is this is a $55 8K guaranteed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you just got to be able to find a fold in these spots, because like there's times I make these type of folds because this is basically very close to the top of my range. So I'm folding here a lot. And sometimes I fold the best hand. But the thing you got to remember is it's better to make a bad fold than a bad call.
Yeah.
Because I make a bad fold here, I'm still in this tournament with like 70 bigs.
Yeah.
I make a bad call, I'm walking to the door like asking myself, why did I call?
Yeah. Well, what did you think he had?
Yeah.
He had to have the flush.
Yeah, so I like that hand.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
All right. So we want to go to hand number 2?
Okay.
All right. So hand number 2 is this is a 5K guaranteed. Actually 25K guaranteed. So this is the 25K $55 buy-in. In this hand, this is the 4th hand of the tournament, first hand I played. So we start at 1020 level, and I have 5,000 chips.
Nice.
So 250 big blinds here, and I'm under the gun with pocket deuces.
UTG, deuce, deuce. Okay.
So I raise, and I like min raising in these spots. I know a lot of people like 3xing or more, but I just min raise here. Just want to try to see these flops as cheaply as possible.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
With twos through probably fives, maybe sixes, something like that. Just make it like a little min one. You're not really encouraging anyone to not call, but you're kind of building the pot a little bit in case you had a set. Yeah, I do the same thing.
Right. And so I raise, and UTG2 calls, and the small blind 3 bets. Okay. So the small blind squeezes to 180.
180. Okay.
Big blind folds, and I call, and UTG2 calls as well.
Okay.
So now there's 560 in the middle. Effective. We have like around 4,500 behind effective. Okay. And small blind, who was the last pre-flop aggressor, bets out for half pot.
Well, what's the flop?
The flop is ace of diamonds, 4 of hearts, 3 of hearts, and we have the deuce of hearts and the 2 of diamonds.
Deuce of hearts, 2 of diamonds. Okay.
Yeah. No idea why I said deuce and then 2. But
I didn't even notice that until you said it.
but you guys get it. And so the guy who squeezed bets out from the small blind. And I decided to call here with my gutter.
What's he bet into 560?
280.
280. Okay, so he clicks the half pot.
Right. And I decided to float here thinking that a lot of people will see bet full range on the ace high board. And if he doesn't actually have the ace, I think he will check fold the turn. So hands that would 3-bet pre-flop, like maybe nines through kings, I think if I call this I could rep the ace on the turn if they decide to check the turn. And B, I do have outs to the gutter. So that's why I decided to float here. But to my chagrin, the UTG2 also calls, which basically ruins my plans.
Yeah, now we're looking for a 5.
Yeah, I'm thinking between the two of them, one of them probably has an ace.
Yeah.
So we all both players call, and now we go to the turn with 1400 in the middle.
1400. Okay.
And the turn is the king of clubs. So small blind checks this time. And I check, basically planning to give up. I'm done with the hand at this point. Mm-hmm. UTG2 also checks behind.
Now that's interesting. What the hell is he calling with if he didn't have maybe a flush draw? That would make sense. I feel like the small blind's probably the weakest at this point.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he turned to king and now he's got some showdown value and he's just trying to get to showdown, but he's going to fold to a bet because there's an ace out there. Maybe, but it doesn't feel like anyone has an ace after this.
I could see like some weaker aces just trying to get the showdown at this point. Like, I mean, the problem is like there's not that many really weak aces because ace 5 or less is either straight or 2 pair. So I'm thinking like ace 6 through like ace 10, ace jack maybe. And I think ace queen, ace king would definitely be betting on this turn. So maybe like the middling aces.
Okay, like ace 8, ace 9, ace 7, stuff like that.
Yeah. I can see just trying to get the showdown there because if you bet, like, what are you hoping to get value from? Can't get value from ace 5 or ace 4, ace 3, ace deuce. So I can see some aces in the range. And like you said, some flush draws. But probably not a ton of stronger hands like a set or ace 4 or ace 3, I think would bet the turn.
Yeah.
So when it checks through, I'm thinking that probably just some weak ace trying to get the showdown, or maybe I'm good with my deuces and I'm up against 2 flush draws, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, so we get to the river, which is the 2 of spades. And because it checked through, there's still 1400 in the middle, and I river bottom set.
Yeah.
Small blind checks, and I bet for a half pot just to try to get value from those middling aces we mentioned. And
maybe a flush draw that had a pair as well.
Right.
King, queen of hearts, king, jack of hearts, king, 10, anything like that. We might be able to get value from a king. Like you said, any ace. 2 pair. Well, I think we would have heard from 2 pair on the turn.
Ace but deuce. Maybe if
ace deuce would definitely call here.
Yeah, but there's only 3 combos of that because I have 3 deuces. Also, we can get value, believe it or not, on this site from like pocket sixes or something like that. Like people are reluctant to fold any type of pair. So like if a guy has a medium pair, which is another hand we didn't mention, that the UTG could have some pocket pair that he's just trying to get the showdown. So we could get value from hands like that as well. So a lot of value targets here. So that's why I bet And again, I bet
And what would you bet? What's your sizing?
I bet 700 into
Into 14.
1400.
Okay.
And the UTG player UTG2 decides to raise to 2000.
Don't like that. And then what's the small blind do?
Small blind folds, and now the action's back on me. And I have bottom set and getting a little bit more than 3-1. And so I need to be right 24% of the time to call here. And just thinking back through the hand, what could he be bluffing with? He could be bluffing with hearts for sure.
Yeah.
That makes some sense. But you would think he would bet those on the turn when checked to. So I can't see a ton of bluffs in his range. As far as value hands I beat, we already mentioned the 2-pair hands we think would have bet the turn. So yeah, this is another one of those spots where I'm just not sure what he has, and I can't think of many hands I beat. And even though I have what seems like a strong hand, at the end of the day, it's just a bluff catcher, and I don't think this guy's bluffing 24% of the time.
I think when he raises here, he's, like you said, he's either got a busted heart draw. For his bluffs, probably just a busted heart draw. I think all aces are just going to call. Kings, he's probably not turning into a bluff. He's probably calling. He's either got a 5 or he doesn't, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Either pocket fives make some sense. That's the type of hand that would definitely call pre, and probably won't bet the it would definitely call pre, and it would definitely call the C bet, and probably not bet the turn. So pocket fives makes a lot of sense here. So I'm assuming
5-6 even for the open ender.
Yep. Pocket fives, 5-6. That's pretty much the only thing that makes sense here to me. That
maybe even stretching a little like 5-7 hearts or something like that.
And on this site, that's not a stretch at all.
Yeah, like we saw with the 3-7 space on
the they like to get in there for sure.
Yeah.
So once again, I decide to fold a seemingly strong hand, and this time villain had ace of hearts, 10 of diamonds. So
that's right. I remember this one when we were going over it. That is so odd.
Yeah. So this is one that I'm having a hard time thinking about what his thought process was. Like, is he raising here for value or as a bluff? I'm assuming he's doing it as a bluff. I guess not necessarily. Now that I think about it, I could easily have a hand like ace 6 through ace 9 that now I think is good because nobody bet the turn. That's possible, but I'm probably not raising those from early position unless they're suited. And I'm probably also am I checking? Yeah, I'm probably checking turn with those. So I guess he's raising for value to get value from like ace 9, ace 8, which is super thin because I'm also playing like ace jack, ace queen, pretty much the same way.
Maybe he's just looking at it simply like he has more 5s in his range than you do, and that's it. You know, maybe he is turning it into a bluff, but he realizes that if you min raise under the gun and then you call the small blinds raise, you don't have many 5s at all, and he could have more than you do. So maybe that's what he's thinking.
See, I think that is like a very high level thought process. And from a good player, I could definitely see that. From the average player on this site, I think the thin value raise, even that is kind of left field. But
Yeah.
that, to me, it makes more sense for a guy to say, um, this guy just called pre. He just called a 3-bet pre, and he didn't bet the turn. So a lot of the times I'm going to have the best hand here with ace 10. So he can have ace 9, ace 8, ace 7, ace 6, and I can raise here for value. That is not a common thought process, but to me, that makes more sense from the average player on Ignition than for somebody to say, I have more fives in my range than this guy, so I'm going to turn top pair into a bluff.
Yeah.
Like, that strikes me as something that like maybe Doug Polk can do, but not some random on Ignition.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is a really interesting hand, and I did get I guess I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this was like this guy inadvertently bluffed me. I think he was raising for value, and but I did fold the best hand here, but I still like my fold because as we talked about earlier with the math, to call here I need to be right 24% of the time, and even though this guy did this time, I don't think that 24% of the Ignition player pool raises here with a hand that I beat.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think most of the time they just have a 5.
Yeah, and and another thing about this hand, this was like the 4th hand of the tournament, so there's no way to like know specifically how this guy plays yet. So you kind of just got to assume that he plays the way everybody else on this site plays. And against the field, I really like this fold, even though in this case, I happen to have folded the best hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that is something that keeps a lot of players from making these folds, is like that nagging desire to know if they're good or not. Like when you play live, sometimes you hear people call to say, I just got to see it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I talk to people, like I talk to my students and say, like, you don't need to know. In fact, you do know. You know they have you beat 9 times out of 10. You're basically paying for something that you already know.
That is such a common theme, such a common act that Elliot even has an MP3 for it, and he calls it folding when you know you're beat, or calling when you know you're beat. I'm like, oh, I struggled with that for so long. I'm getting much better now, but yeah. And the great thing about Ignition though is you can pull up you can get a hand history and find out 48 hours later,
right?
You know?
And
yeah, just like you're doing here. You know, you didn't get to see his hand in the moment, but 2 days later. You do, and you can see everyone's hand at the table.
Exactly. And the cool thing about it is I don't really have that desire to know anymore. And I'll say in most situations, I don't have that desire. And so I don't make these bad calls most times. But even when I go back and review and I make these hero folds, it was generally the right fold. So that just kind of reinforces that even when I do find out later, I find out what I already knew. It's like 9 times out of 10, I was beat.
Yeah.
And it's better to err on the side of bad folds than bad calls, for sure.
Yeah. Let me throw in a live read here. All this talk about tournament hands, tournament poker edge. You play tournaments. I play tournaments. Carlos plays tournaments. What do we have in common? We're a part of Tournament Poker Edge. Really get better at playing these things that you and I love so much. Interact with the pros you hear all the time on this podcast. Watch videos from all the pros. Casey Jarzabek is on TPE. Carlos even has a few free videos he did up there with Andrew Brokus. You can click on the link in the show notes for a free training video, and you can watch Carlos's video with Andrew doing a review of his 100K guarantee win on, lo and behold, Ignition. Go through the free videos, check them out. There's hours of them. When you do join the club, you'll get access to almost 2,000 videos. How to play from the button, playing from the blinds, hand history reviews, how to set up your HUD, using Bitcoin on American sites, and of course, poker tournament theory and strategy. When you do join, use the code HUP month, HUP quarter, or HUP year. Save yourself some cash. SYSC. Study and learn with other people that are just like us. It'll be the best thing you've ever done for your tournament game. I guarantee it. Alrighty. Okay, let's do another one, Carlos.
All right, so this next hand is from a $22 buy-in, 5K guaranteed. We're at the 2040 level, so it's early in the tournament, and I have 5,000 chips.
So you got 125 bigs?
Right. And so I am UTG1 with pocket queens.
UTG1, queen, lovely hand.
Right. So this time I make it 120.
23x, okay.
And UTG 3 calls.
Okay. And
somehow we go heads up. Like that is so rare.
Not even the big blind.
Not even the big blind. This is crazy. All right. So we go heads up, and there's 300 in the middle. Okay. And the flop is ace of spades, queen of clubs, 8 of clubs. And I have queen of spades, queen of diamonds.
Okay.
So I flop middle set. And I lead out for half pot, 150.
Okay.
Villain calls.
Calls 150. Okay. So we got 600 in the middle?
Yep. So I'm thinking he has like a ton of ace-x, clubs, gutters, like a lot of stuff for me to get value from.
Yeah. Jack 10s, 9-10.
King Jack. King 10.
Oh yeah, King Jack, King 10.
Yeah. A lot of value targets here. So I bet and I get called. And then on the turn, I bet half pot again. So I bet 300 and the 600 on the turn. The turn
just real quick on the flop. Now that you mentioned that about all the aces that he has in his range, all the gutters, you might even be able to go bigger than half pot right here, like make it 222 or something like that, just because this, even though we're blocking the hell out of all the queens, all the other cards are completely open, and he's got a lot of gutters and aces. You might be able to bump it up a little bit more on the flop.
Yeah, generally, this must be an older hand. Like generally, I'll just bet pot here.
Okay.
Because what I found is like this deep on Ignition in these small stake games, like if I bet pot, I'm getting called by like Jack 10. I'm getting called by like, anything that they want to see the turn with, they're calling me. Any ace, any king, any ace, any queen. A lot of 8s, if not any 8. Because like we're thinking pot. That sounds big. This guy's thinking 300. He has me covered. He has 6,800. So he's thinking like, 300 is nothing out of my 6,800. So they don't really look at pot size as much. So I definitely like a bigger bet on this flop. But on this day, I just bet half pot for some reason.
Okay. And let's see, we go to the turn. What was the turn?
The turn is the 4 of spades.
Spades. That's innocuous. Okay.
So
and
now
we bet out 300?
Yep. So half pot again. And for sure, I could go bigger on the turn once he calls the flop. Another thing I'll say about this hand is this brings in 2 flush draws in addition to all the gutters we talked about. So definitely could bet bigger here, but again, I chose not to. I bet half pot, and he calls again.
Okay. So now we got, let's see, 600 was in the pot on the turn. You bet 3, he called, so we got 12.
Yep, 12 in the middle, and I have 45 behind, and the other guy has me covered. And so the river is the king of clubs.
Not the card we wanted. Okay.
Right. So if we think about what's happening here, I think I definitely want to bet again on the river to get value from all those ace-x hands. But we did mention a couple of hands that got there, like clubs and also the jack 10. I don't, similar to we mentioned in the other hand, I don't think the guy has 2 pair on this river, because if he had like ace 8, ace 4, ace queen, I think he would have raised by now. Same thing goes for sets, and even ace king is a hand that he may 3-bet pre-flop.
3-bet pre-flop or raise the flop?
Right. So I'm discounting ace king.
Or raise the turn.
Right.
Yeah.
So king queen makes sense if he happened to have that. But again, that's heavily blocked by our hand and also by the board. So I bet half pot on the river, and then the guy raises it to 1240. So this is like
so you bet 600 into 1200, and then he takes the time to type this in, because instead of making it 1200, he makes it 1240.
That's a good point.
That might be more of a tell, actually, than the fact that he raised.
Yeah, that's so awkward. So when he raises here, I kind of got to go through my whole process again. Like, okay, what is he doing this with that I beat? And again, I'm thinking we're down to like king queen, which is what 3 combos if he calls king, and I think he does call king queen offsuit in that spot. So 3 combos of king queen, and
I was thinking king 8, but I don't think, even on ignition, I don't think king 8 is calling the turn. On a board of ace, queen, 8, 4, like, is king 8 really calling a bet on the turn there? Maybe, but...
Yeah, it's possible, but
I don't think
so. Not
I think they're getting away from it at that point.
Right, and another thing is the general player on this side is passive, so even if he happened to river 2 pair, I'm not even 100% convinced that he would raise with king 8 on this river, given that flushes, straights, and bigger 2 pairs and sets, like all that stuff is in my range.
Yeah.
So he can't really raise there expecting to get called by worse if he has a hand as bad as king 8. So I'm just thinking like king queen, the 3 combos of king queen, and maybe a few combos of ace king, and that's it. And so as far as like hands he would do this with that I beat, and there's a good number of flush draws and straights like we mentioned. Because this is ignition, I think the guy has all the jack 10s in his range pre-flop. And I wouldn't be shocked if he called all the way down with the gutter. But let's say, like, even if he only has like half of those combinations, that's 8 jack 10 combinations. And once you throw in all the flush draws, like all the ace-x flush draws make sense, although maybe he raises those. But maybe people feel less. Well, you tell me, what do you think about this? Like, do you think people feel less inclined to like raise with the nut flush draw when they have a pair with it versus when they don't? So if this guy had like ace deuce of clubs, is he more likely to raise his flop given that he has a pair of aces, or if the ace was like a king of spades. I think people are more likely to bluff with the nut flush draw when they don't have a pair with it.
When they don't have the pair. I think you're right. I think that little bit of showdown value gives them more. They'd be more inclined to either check call or just call without raising.
Right. So I think he can still have a lot of the what is that 10 ace X of clubs in his range. All the other, so like but other than that though, this kind of goes back to what we said earlier about when guys just flat outside of the big blind, they have less flush draws. Like I don't put anything past these people, but I'm assuming this guy doesn't have 7-3 suited.
Okay.
Like that first guy did. But he could definitely have like Jack 9 of clubs, Jack. I don't even know if I want to give him Jack 7, but Jack 9 for sure. 10-9, 10-7, I wouldn't be too shocked to see. 9-7. But that's about it.
All of them. 6-7 of clubs. Let's see. With the eights out there, so 9-7 of clubs. Then 10-9 of clubs would make. I think just about pick two cards with clubs in them and take out the worst ones. But see, the thing here is that we decided that the only hands that we can call here and that we're beating are 3 combos of King Queen and maybe 1 combo of Ace King, just because I really think we would have heard from him pre-flop, on the flop, or on the turn with that hand. But when you just look at Jack 10 off here, even if he makes it to the river with half of those combos, that's 8. So that's twice as many of the 2 hands that we could possibly beat. Plus, you got all the clubs in there.
Right. So he definitely has a lot more hands that beat us than we beat. So I decided to fold here. And this is one of those spots where even though I was getting a really good price, because of the price I was getting, I actually wouldn't hate a call because we could name a few hands that we think he has here that we beat. But to me, it's still kind of like break even at best.
Yeah.
Like if I'm calling here, it's kind of like a break even call just to keep him honest. And for the most part, I just don't think people bluff enough on this site. And again, this is the 19th hand of the tournament. So we're still like in the second level. And until proven otherwise, I assume people on this site are loose passive because 70-80% of them are. And I just don't see them doing this as a bluff. So I decided to fold. And I did. And the guy gleefully showed me 8-7 of hearts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got bluffed in this spot also. But it's still this is one that, I think this one, there's more of a case for a call because of the sizing here and because of the number of hands we can include that we beat. But still, I think this one is probably break even. It would be a break even call, where the last one I think would have been a bad call.
Yeah.
And so I'm still okay with this fold.
So he did make it to the river with just an 8. I was wondering about King 8, and then he had 8-7. Jesus. Okay.
Right. And obviously this raises as a bluff. Like nobody's raising 8-7 here for value. So this is one of the few guys who we know for a fact did this as a bluff, and congratulations to him. Like I think he deserves his pot if he's willing to make this move, because I guarantee you 90% of players aren't.
Yeah.
And he had to like have the ability to make this move and be up against the one guy on this site who could fold a set in this spot. So all the planets had to align for this to work out for him. But, congratulations.
You got me.
Yeah.
Right on.
That was I think that was hand number 6.
That was hand 6, yeah.
Yeah, so all right. So hand 9, this is one that's later in the tournament. This is probably one of the more questionable ones that we have, in my opinion. We are at the 200, 400 level, and I have I'm in the small blind, and I have 9,600 behind after putting in the small blind.
Okay.
And action folds around to me in the small blind. So this is a blind versus blind hand.
So you got 24 bigs, and is my math right, or are we?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay.
And the big blind just has me covered. He has 11K total. So 10-6 after putting in the 400 big blind. So
Okay. So you're 24 bigs effective. He's got you covered. You're in the small blind. It folds to you.
Right. And I have pocket kings. King of hearts. King of diamond. I'm sorry. King of hearts. King of spades. Now this one, I took an unconventional line, so this one is going to be relevant to the stats are going to be relevant. The big blind was pretty tight, and he was running 12-10, and let's see how often he folded his big blind. So he folded his big blind like 90% of the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I guess
how many hands is this?
This is 165 hands I have on him.
Oh, that's a good sample on ignition.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this guy's going to fold here a lot. So I decided just to limp in here as a trap, and basically just to I think he's going to fold so many hands pre-flop, but if I let him see the flop for free, if he makes a hand post-flop, he's going to be less likely to fold blind versus blind. So, for example, this is the type of guy who I don't think will call with Jack 8 offsuit if I raise here. But if I limp it and the flop comes like Ace King Jack, I think he'll call a bet. Even with any type of pair.
Okay.
But we limp it in, he checks it back, and the flop is King of diamonds, 7 of clubs, 5 of spades.
King of diamonds, 7 of clubs, 5 of spades. Okay, so we limp. He checks behind. The pot is, it's 800 with the blinds. What? There's antes at this point?
Yes. So the pot is 1120.
1120. Okay. Flop. We flop the world.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of in the same situation. Problem. Yeah. I'm kind of in the same position as before as, okay, this guy's tight and I have the nuts, so I'm going to slow play a little bit and give him a chance to hit something. And then on this flop, there's still not much for him to hit because I, like you said, have the world. Yeah. And so I decide to check again on this flop. And I think the flop check is definitely better than the pre-flop limp.
I was going to say with the pre-flop, I really like your reasoning, and then if this guy's folded, you got 165 hands on him. That's like the equivalent of having 3,000 on ACR. Right. You know what I mean in ignition world. And the fact that he folds his big blind 90% of the time, he's a 12-10. Yeah, I would either limp like you did, or I would just click it to 800 and just hope he's got something that he can call with, you know what I mean? But even that, I think I like the limp a little bit more because when you raise there, it's saying that you got something.
Right.
Your hand is so under-repped, you can really get a lot of value from almost any pair, I think.
Right. And so, when you have pocket kings, generally you want to see a king high flop, but in this situation, I would have been much happier with a queen high flop. Yeah. But because now it's I still don't have much to get value from. So I decided to check again, and he checks back. And so
Okay.
the turn is the ace. I'm sorry, the 8 of hearts.
8 of hearts. Okay, so at this point, we still got 11-20 in the pot. We've
Uh,
got pocket kings, and the board now is king, 7, 5, 8. And what do we have left in our stack?
like 9,400.
Okay, so we've got like 8-1,
Yeah,
almost 9-1 stacked to pot. Okay.
right. So now at this point, I'm thinking, okay, he either has like, there's a chance he has like one pair or like some type of draw, or maybe even like two pair or something now. So now I'm starting to bet, and um, I think I'm also like, um, I don't want to use the word scared. I'm either scared or I'm trying to make up for lost value because I bet pot on this turn. Thinking that if the guy does have a 6, I'm not going to give him the right price to draw to it. So I pot it, and he decides to call.
Okay. Yeah, I guess pot's not this feels kind of like what you just said, like you're trying to make up for lost value. I might go like 800, because then you're more likely to get called if he checked back a 7. You know, if he's tight and passive like this, then I think he could check a 7 behind when you check the flop, or do you think he'd bet that, or?
Um, I think he would definitely check it behind. But I also think that 800 is going to basically look like pot to him anyway. Like, I do like what you said about maybe using a smaller size than I did to try to like entice him to call with some of the weaker parts of his range. But I think anything like more than like 60% of the pot is going to pretty much look the same to him. Like, I can't imagine this guy would call with a 7 for 800, but not for 1100. But I
Okay.
can't. But
Okay.
I can see him calling like 600 with some hands that he wouldn't call pot with. So, but then what the problem comes in with that is you kind of getting to the point where you give him a good price to draw, especially if he has implied odds. Um, so I don't know. I'm torn between the big bet or like I'm either going like half pot or around half pot or around pot, one of the two. This time I chose pot just to try to get value from um,
A
definitely
6.
definitely a 6, definitely an 8, maybe a 7, and two pair is does he I don't know if he just calls with two pair or raises. I don't It doesn't matter because I can beat two pair, but um that's obviously another hand that he could have turned. But we bet and he calls.
Okay.
Now going into the river, there's 3360 in the middle, and we have 8300 behind, roughly. And the river is the 6 of clubs, which sucks.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ones there.
Yeah. And the biggest problem with this river is any hand that I kind of want to bet to get value from may not call me. No, let me rephrase that. Like for example, I mean, like if the guy has like Queen 8, he's probably not calling to a river bet. He's probably not calling a river bet when there's 4 to a straight, an overcard, and I bet pot on the turn, and he's a tight player.
Yeah.
So I decide to bet half pot on this river, 1680, but I don't know if I like that. The other reason I don't like my river bet is because the hands that will call this bet, a lot of them will bet themselves if I check because I'm basically targeting like two pair at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this guy rivered two pair with 8-6. I don't know if he's just trying to show that down in a blind versus blind situation.
Yeah, I
So
like a check call here because I think, like you said, these two pairs are probably they are probably going to check behind on if you check to them, but yeah, man, this is a tough spot. At
see this. If I think they're going to check behind, then I'd definitely rather bet myself. But if I think they're going to bet, I'd rather check call. Um, um, but okay, so example of what I'm thinking. Let's say this was a queen high board instead of a king high board. I
okay,
I definitely rather bet the river as opposed to check it, because at that point my main value target is that queen, and the queen's never betting on this four to the
yeah,
straight board. But I can't give these people credit for being able to check back two pair in these type of spots, because they generally don't understand relative hand strength. They know that, hey, two pair is a good hand, so I'm gonna bet, not thinking that it's less of a good hand when there's four to a straight out there and a guy bet pot on the turn.
yeah,
But I do give them. I pretty much assume most people on this site will check back like Queen Jack, Queen 10 on a Queen high board. So I definitely want to bet on those boards to get value from those hands that would check back. And again, in this spot, if I had any thought that this guy, and maybe this is why I bet. Like if I think this guy's gonna check back two pair, I definitely want to bet here. And because he's so tight, maybe I thought he would check back two pair, and maybe that is the best guess I have for my rationale for betting this river. If this guy was aggressive at all, I would rather check call this river. But seeing as how he's tight and passive, I think I like the river bet now, because there's a lot of two pair I can get value from.
yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I do kind of like the smaller sizing, the half pot here instead of going full pot. Because if you go full pot and then he shoves, like there's so much money in the middle, and God, even then I think you'd have to fold. But
Right.
yeah, I think half pot's probably accomplishing the same as full pot, and that'll allow him to call with those two pairs.
Right.
I don't think he's going to raise there with two pair.
No, no, no. Yeah,
I
he's
think he's
definitely
only raising with a nine, and he's probably only calling with a four. I don't think he's raising with a four for a straight.
right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Like this, I mean, this board is even scary for a four. So I bet, and the guy shoves, and so I have 6600 behind, and I'm getting 2-1. So I need to be a good 33% of the time. Not even close to a call.
No.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
this is this
No.
is the this is the easiest fold ever, and
You broke your arm folding,
right, couldn't
clicking the
could,
mouse.
couldn't wait to fold that one, and in this hand the guy had 10-9 offsuit. So
Okay.
this is the type of hand that maybe he would call if I made it like 800, like you suggest. But I don't know if he. I mean, this is a pretty good hand. So, like for example, if I was going to raise here pre-flop, I probably would make
Mhm.
it 1200, and I think he folds like 10-8 offsuit to that, but maybe 10-9 offsuit he calls. But I'm not
Yeah.
even sure. I'm not even sure because he's folding like 90% of hands. Um, in that, well, I should say, he's folded 9 out of 10 times when his big blind has been raised.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was right, that betting the flop was pointless because there wasn't much for him to have, and then I was right betting the turn big, because I wanted to like charge him for this draw that he happened to pick up.
Yeah, yeah. Because
And then
he was open ended there on the turn with the 7-8 out there.
right. So he was open ended. I bet pot, so he was getting 3-1, 2-1, which means he needs to be right 33% of the time, and he's only going to win this hand about 16% of the
24?
time.
Oh, 16? Oh, I was way off.
He's got 8 outs with 1 card to come. I just doubled the number of outs. So actually, I didn't give him, like, he didn't have the right price to draw. But then even when he made his hand, I did bet again, so he did pick up more chips. So I'm just trying to do the math on that real quick, and I can't do it fast, but it's closer. So if you include my river half pot bet as like implied odds, then I think he needed to win about 20% of the time, between 20 and 25. And still, he's only going to win 16% of the time, even when you include my river bet. So even my pot size bet on the turn and my half pot bet on the river still isn't enough to give him the right direct and implied odds to make that turn call. And only way his turn call is good is if I'm paying off this river shove, which I didn't. So yeah, by slow playing this hand pre-flop, I put myself in a tricky spot. But I think by playing it well post-flop, I kind of made up for it and got away from like the worst possible run out. And if you're not, just to the people listening, if you're not able to like make this river fold, then you probably don't want to limp in pre-flop, because you're going to put yourself in tricky spots sometimes, and you got to be able to get away from it. A hand that was the second nuts on the pre-flop, became like a bluff catcher, and not even a good bluff catcher on this particular board. So you got to understand relative hand strength as opposed to absolute hand strength.
And another thing to point out too, and I think this is probably goes without saying, but I'll just reiterate it, is that the reason that we limped here is just because the guy is so tight and he's folding so often in the big blind, and we have a sample size to back that up. Right. And raising here, I think we're just kind of wasting kings.
Yeah, I agree with that. So one more hand if we have time for it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
I like this. This is going to be a long episode. I love it.
Okay. We'll make this one a little bit faster. All right. Okay. So this hand is from a $22 buy-in 5K guarantee. And we are in we're at the 200, 400 level with antes. So I think the ante is 40. And we're in the big blind with 10-4 offsuit. So this must be a limp pot. So
I hope so.
Yeah. The hijack limps. Okay. And I'll give you stacks in just a second. Hijack limps, small blind completes, and I'm in the big blind with 10-4 offsuit. So I just check it. Now, the effective stack in this hand is about 22K.
And that's the hijack or the small blind?
That's the hijack. And they both have around 22K, and I have them both covered with about 30K.
Okay, and we got 30K. All right.
And that's before that, and those numbers I gave you before we put in the blinds and the bet.
Okay, so they got 55 big blinds, and you've got more than that, so 55 big blinds effective. Okay.
Right. So we check. We go to the flop. There's 1480 in the middle.
1480.
Yes.
Okay. 1480.
And the flop is 10 of clubs, 10 of spades, 10 of diamonds. So our flop trips.
Three
I'm
tens?
Wait. I'm sorry. 10 of clubs, 10 of spades, 8 of diamonds.
I was trying to think how this would be a hero fold.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Keeping with the theme and all. How do we get away from quads?
Right. I'm a nit.
Okay, so 8, 10, 10. Okay.
I'm a nit, but I ain't that nitty. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the guy runs out a royal flush. Anything's possible.
Yeah. You just sold it.
Yeah. So yeah, I flop trips, 1480 in the middle. The small blind leads out for 680. And so now I need to decide if I want to raise or call. And I'm putting him on a range of like a 10 or 8 or maybe some type of draw. Jack 9, 9, 7, Queen Jack, Queen 9. Like there's a lot of gut shots, a couple of open-ended.
What were the suits again on the flop? It was 10 of clubs, 10 of spades, and the 8 was
diamonds. So it's rainbow.
Okay, so it's rainbow. Okay. Yeah, a lot of hands that would make sense to me here is like a lone 8. You'll see that a lot. A guy in the small blind completes with the, 8-7 or 8-6 or something like that. And they just, I feel like it's a one and done for them. You know what I mean? Like they just try to bet out and then just try to win it there with their pair of 8s. You could see a 10 lead out here, but there's only one left in the deck. And then, like you said, the Jack 9, 9-7, both those are open-ended. And then another one here that I think would be good as a lead out here for the small blind would be something like Queen Jack suited. So Queen Jack for the gut shot, 2 overs, and then like a backdoor flush draw. So like Queen Jack of spades or Queen Jack of clubs or Queen Jack of diamonds that they could get a backdoor. There's a lot of good turns on a board like this for the Queen Jack suited. You know what I mean? Like any ace, any king, a queen or a jack gives you a pair, a 9 gives you a straight. There's a lot of good cards that you can fire on the turn here, and then any spade or club or diamond that could give you the flush draw. So yeah, I put that on his range too.
Now a lot of that may raise pre, given that this was a limp pot. But he definitely has some hands like that in his range for sure.
That's a good point. Yeah, he could raise that from the small blind when the hijack just limps. Do you have many hands on these guys?
Let's see, because this was deeper into the tournament. I have about 60 hands. I got 60 hands on the limper and 70 hands on the small blind.
Okay. And what's the hijack, the limpers numbers?
33-3.
Wow.
Typical ignition. And small blind is 22-10.
Okay. Yeah. And with numbers like that, they might just complete with those two. This is Monday morning quarterback, but okay. Yeah, I'd go for a call here just because I think an 8's going to fold if you raise. The Queen Jack and the Jack, well, hang on. The Queen Jack and the Jack 9, they're going to call a raise, I would think. Maybe not the Queen Jack. Jack 9's definitely calling. 9-7's calling.
Like when I look at this,
I could go either way on this one because you want the hijack to come along as well. If he.
Yeah, like he may if we call here, he may decide to like raise with, whatever he has. But thinking more so about this small blind, you're right. I think we're not going to get much from an 8 if we raise here. And so if he has a hand like that and he decides to bluff catch with it, I think we can like call here, and if he checks the turn, we could bet to get value from an 8 on later streets. Also, if he does happen to have a better 10, I don't want to like this is not I don't know if I'm capable of raise folding this flop. So if I raise and it comes over the top, I'm just done to a better 10. And if he is betting with a draw, I expect him to keep betting. Like if he has like you said, Queen Jack suited. Often he's going to pick up a hand on a card on the turn that he's going to want to continue betting with, and so I don't mind using this as a bluff catcher against those type of hands, especially since I know what cards are good for me and what cards are bad for me. So if I think a guy's betting like an 8 or a 10 or some straight draws, then I know I need to be worried on like the cards that make straights. But if it comes like a deuce or a king or a deuce or like an ace on the river, I know I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I call, and the turn is the 6 of diamonds.
So that hijack, what's a hijack do?
Hijack folds.
Oh, okay. So we're heads up here.
Yep. So the turn's the 6 of diamonds, and there's 2840 in the middle now.
2840. Okay. 6 of diamonds. Well, 9-7 got there.
Yep.
Jack 9, we're good. Queen Jack. Okay. All right. And what's small blind do?
He checks now. And like I said, I'm thinking if he's bluffing, he's going to continue to bet. So I'm thinking a lot of times here he has like an 8. And this is a card I think an 8 may call on. And so I decided not to bet here, but I think that's a mistake. Looking at it now, I think I like a bet to get value from an 8. I don't think he has as many draws now, because if he did, I think they would keep betting. But if he's the type of person to like check a draw at this point, I do want to bet to try to get value from it. So I really don't like my check on this turn.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I like a bet here too. Nothing crazy, third, half pot, something like that, but just something to get a call from Jack 9 if that's what he had and he's checking it now. Afraid maybe you have a 10, and then I think he's got a lot of 8s in his range.
Yep. So turn goes check, check, and now the river is the Jack of diamonds. And so he checks again.
Okay, 2840 in the pot, small blind checks. Okay, the final board here is 10-10, 8-6, and then the river is the Jack of diamonds. So we get a backdoor flush here, right?
Right, backdoor flush. 9-7 came in on the turn. Queen 9 for straight on the river. And
Queen 9 would be the only straight, and then 9-7 would be the only straight. Queen Jack just paired up.
Jack 10 for a boat, but I don't think he's checking this much with Jack 10. So, but he checks, and I don't give people credit for being able to check strong hands in these spots. So I don't really see a reason. Like, what I should say is I like a bet on this river to get value from an 8, maybe. I feel like you get called more on pair boards, especially when you're this deep and the call doesn't really hurt the guy's stack. Yeah. So if this guy has an 8, I think you can find a call here. Same thing with a Jack, obviously. Maybe even a 6, given that it's a pair board. And I know the flush draw came in, but I think that would be more relevant if the stacks were shorter.
Yeah, even that, though, it's a backdoor flush, so you can't give too much credence to it. And he didn't bet the turn, so...
No. I'm thinking from his point of view, if he has an 8, or if he has a 6, would he call me when I bet here, or would the flush draw coming in scare him away? I think... okay. Yeah, I think the flush draw would scare him away if he was shorter, but I think people don't have much fear of making bad calls when it doesn't really hurt their stack to do so.
Yeah.
So I bet to get called by basically any pair and maybe some hero with ace high. But I bet and he raises. So I bet 14-20 into 2840 half pot,
Half pot.
and he makes it 3860. So this is something that I wasn't really expecting, because a lot of people would any hand that can beat trips would just lead out on the river, given how weakly I played the hand at this point. So I'm kind of confused on what he could have here. And I'm getting a little bit more than 3-1. I need to be right 23% of the time to make this call. And because I'm a nit, I decided to fold. But there's a lot of stuff that got there that beats me for sure, or something that already had me beat. I think the thing that confused me the most about this hand is that all those hands that I'm thinking of, I would expect most of them to bet the river as opposed to check raising it. But either way, like, what do I beat when he does this? I can't think of
Unless
anything
he
I beat.
soul read you on a week 10. I mean, like,
and even then, like, how many unknowns on ignition are like folding a week 10 here? Like I can't think of him check raising here. Kind of small actually, as a bluff to bluff out trips.
yeah.
So I don't know what he has, but another thing that I learned from Alex Assassinato is when in doubt, fold. And that is like the theme of this whole of all these hands. It's like, if I'm not sure, I just fold, man. I don't care what I have. I'm a nit like that. but I folded, and in this case, the guy had Queen 9, so he rivered the straight. And
oh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
So he had an over with a, well,
so he led out.
I guess
with the
on the turn he was. Am I reading this wrong? He was double gutted on the turn because a 7 or a 9 would give him a straight.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not gonna give this guy that type of credit, but a sig line on the turn would be to check raise with the intention of bluffing diamonds if they come in. So I don't know if he was going for that, but had he gone for that, do I fold? So limp pot, he leads flop, I call. And if he check raises a turn, and I have trips with a week 4,
I think I'm folding there.
Yeah, I'll probably fold also. So basically gonna lose the same amount regardless in this pot. But at least the way I played it, I folded with the worst hand, as opposed to if I bet the turn and he raises, I'm folding with the best hand. But who knows if he's gonna? Who knows if his plan is to check raise the turn? But say I bet the turn and he calls, and he gets down the river. I'm assuming he's checking to me, and I'm checking back. So pretty much no matter what, I am losing the same amount in this hand, regardless of what line I took. But I think betting the flop is probably best. But yeah, this is a hand where I'm not 100% sure what the right play is. What I do know is when I get raised, fold. That's the only thing I'm confident in. And this time I didn't get bluffed. So I think we looked at 4 hands and I got bluffed in no, we looked at 6 hands and I got bluffed in 2 of them, I think. But I think we went through and just looked for like the most interesting hands. So total in this spot, in these hands that I have marked for review, I made 10 hero folds and I got bluffed twice out of 10 times. So I don't mind giving up, making those 2 quote unquote bad folds and spots where I had the best hand if I'm also going to get away 8 out of 10 times when I have the worst hand.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're not out of the tournament those 8 out of 10 times, whereas otherwise you might have been.
Yeah, like this tournament right here, I went on to get 4th place for like $440. So,
Nice.
Who knows if that happens if I kind of play this hand faster and end up bloating the pot to the point where I can't get away on this river.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So,
right on.
Hero falls. It's a good thing to do.
Yes, it is. It is. Right on. Well, thank you for coming on, Carlos.
Well, thank you. This was fun.
Yes, it was. We went kind of long, but I like doing these long ones every now and then. It sometimes, you listen to them and you can't get through them all in one sitting, so you got to come back on Wednesday and finish it up. I like it. And thank you for tuning in. You can get your free 7-minute Tilt-Buster. Click on the link in the show notes. When you purchase an MP3, use the code HUPoker. Check out the free training videos at Tournament Poker Edge. Sign up and use the codes HUP month, HUP quarter, and HUP year. Bookmark us on Amazon, headsuppoker.poker. If you want to get a hold of Carlos, you can follow him on Twitter, hiphop101trivia. And if you're interested in coaching from Carlos, and you can tell by going through this episode that he's quite the poker player. You can get him at www.facebook.com/mediocrepoker. So sign up for coaching there with Carlos at Facebook. And thank you for tuning in. Here is your weekly motivational speech.
Remember to be a fool. Sounds crazy. A fool is by definition a person who lacks good sense or judgment. But I'm here to tell you that good sense and judgment are highly overrated. Wisdom is too often just a fancy word for cynicism. And foolishness is a condescending word for joy, wonder, and curiosity. George Bernard Shaw said, "A man learns to skate by staggering about and making a fool of himself. Indeed, he progresses in all things by resolutely making a fool of himself." I couldn't agree more. It turns out the world provides us with virtually infinite opportunities to be a fool. Let's take a look at a couple. Only a fool would risk failure. Be that fool. Only a fool would work hard when there's no clear objective. Be that fool. Shouldn't we wait until we have direction before we take decisive action? Otherwise, we risk wasting a lot of time and energy. But many times in life, college graduation, for example, we don't have a clear goal. We're overwhelmed by all of the options, or we're scared we don't know enough to succeed at the thing we want. Doesn't matter. Be a fool and work hard at whatever's right in front of you. When you try hard at everything you do, even if it feels utterly foolish to do so, you're opening up future doors and possibilities that you might not be seeing in the moment. Only a fool would deliberately scare himself. Be that fool. Here's the thing, scaring ourselves is, well, it's scary. And that's not necessarily fun for anybody, but you have to do it because it's the most potent catalyst for growth.